we're actually going to start with Aha right now. Josh, I don't know if you have it up. In honor of Matt, do we want to do a like what their number is in best ever albums, perhaps, or do you want to throw that in later? I know I'm springing that on you right now.
Yeah, let's do it. Aha's Hunting High and Low is released in 1985. It is number 25 in 1985. It is 312 in the 80s, and Aha is ranked the 672nd artist in overall rankings with a total rank score of 2,628. Matt has not explained what that means, so we'll just...
It's a complex
algorithm.
Rubric or algorithm, yeah. So
is Aha the number one Norwegian band of all time? We can discuss that.
Oh, well, I feel like I'd need more. It's got to be like a death metal like band, and or like, do I even know another mainstream Norwegian?
I know. I was struggling to think of what else.
Cardigans are from Denmark, and I don't want to throw all Scandinavian countries together.
Let's see if
Who
I know
else is
anyone.
a Norwegian pop artist with crossover appeal?
Jesus. There's a band called Kings of Convenience that sounds vaguely familiar.
What was the name? Kings of
Convenience.
Kings of Convenience. No, don't know that.
Yeah, I don't. The second artist is Susan Sundfjord, and then Jenny Haval. Sorry for my Norwegian pronunciation. Yeah, I don't recognize any of these bands on this list. So
yeah,
possibly.
I mean, Sweden and Denmark have had stuff, and we did talk about like Finland had Jaco Pastorius, right?
Yep.
There, so we had a couple.
And Iceland has a couple artists that we know of that are more
Bjork
famous.
and Sigur Rós, right?
Yep.
That's the two that come to mind for me.
Same.
There. But this is our dip into Norway.
Well, congratulations, Aha. You're on the board as the de facto most famous Norwegian band.
And I have to say, aha, is what we're going to say now that we haven't answered that question. So, want a little bio, Josh?
Yes, please.
And I am now going to make my attempt at Norwegian pronunciations. And I always hate to be the ugly American who's like, these words, they're long and confusing. So I will obviously clean this stack along the way. But Aha was started initially by Pal Wakhtar and Magni Furuholmen. Or Furuholmen. I'm guessing it kind of runs together like that. So like Furuholmen, you know, as opposed to syllables like I'm seeing it.
I think he's known as Mags to the fans I saw.
Mags. So Mags and our pal Wakhtar, formerly of a group called Bridges. They actually went out to form a synth pop group, which I thought was kind of interesting. And they brought in, it's funny, I read like 3 or 4 different bios of Aha, and each of them described vocalist Morten Harket a different way, from like nimble to, you know, just these different words to describe his voice, right? So we're going to go with nimble as the one that I'm going to go with as the vocalist. And they were in this place called the London Flat. And I think it got that name because it was in a pretty awful condition, seems to be part of that origin story. So they're there in the early 80s.
This is in Norway, I imagine, or
I don't know, because it keeps being called the London Flat. So I don't know if it's like an apartment that they imagine looked like London, or if it was in London. I'm gonna have to clean that stack. I just assumed it was in London, but now come to think of it, Josh, a lot of times it was in like quotation marks. So I wonder if it's sort of like if
that's what their nickname was for their house in Norway.
Yeah, it's like a chair or a window, right, that's named after a certain location. Yeah, so I wonder if that's kind of what was going on there. But anyway, Aha, by late 1983, has gotten signed to a record label, WEA. And in 84, they're recording this album. And obviously, they break through in 85. That's when this album is formally released, and when Take On Me, which is the track that Josh was mentioning, which probably is one of the, in my opinion, one of the 10 most famous videos that MTV in America ever played.
I think it's something that, if you haven't seen it, please go to YouTube and watch the video.
Pretty remarkable, because the animation still is striking. For the modern time, and we're recording this in 2022. It's not one of these. It's like, oh, look at the special effects. They did a good job, and it was amazing. But now look at it. It's really still kind of amazing. And to know the degree of difficulty there, I think makes it even more remarkable. And it's a pretty touching video.
Yeah, maybe a
well.
good candidate for our Internet Killed the Video Star segment when we get around to 85.
Gotcha. So yeah, it's a stop life mixed with almost like comic animation,
Black and white. Yeah.
One thing I thought that was interesting was that Aha was kind of grouped as like a teen pop group, which I never have thought of. Aha. I mean, I think of them as synthetic and 80s and even one-hit wonder in the context of America. Now, they certainly were not a one-hit wonder in Europe, where they sold a lot, but probably that was in America, where we're coming from, their big track. But yeah, I never thought of them as a teen like pop group. But I think it kind of disappeared relatively quickly, is my understanding. And that is basically the kind of general lead up. I'm not going to do a long bio. I mean, Aha has, they continued to basically tour for a very, very long time. They said that they were going to retire in 2009, but then they came back in 2015, both with an album and a world tour. I think it was funny, in 2017 they did they recorded a concert, an acoustic concert for MTV Unplugged, which I didn't even know MTV Unplugged existed in 2017. I was shocked, but it coincided with the summer solstice, which I thought was very interesting. And they recorded a show, and they actually did another world tour in 2018. So they were around for 20 years. They stopped for a little bit, and then they went back together. But this is their first full-length album. And you know what, Josh? Probably as good a time as any to start talking about it right now. Thoughts on Hunting High and Low, first LP by
Yes.
Aha.
Well, so it's clear that we're fully in the 80s synth sound with this album. It's
For
very
sure.
well produced. It's got a artificial sound to counterpoint like an organic sound. It feels very electronic and manufactured, which all albums are to. But do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like it's very clean. There's not. It seems very thought out and
I know what you're saying, because electronic music for that, it's like when it sounds as much like it was made on a computer or synthesizer as it does played by instruments. Is how I would. Yeah.
I don't get the impression that they're playing a lot of instruments in this band. It's very much founded on the synth and their keyboards and probably some like electronic drums too. I don't think there's
the credits literally have Morton and Magni as composer is their credit. So that would tend to, I think, lead to it. There is someone credited with the oboe. I'm trying to see, because I see Morton, I see Magni, I'm looking for Pal here in the credits.
Yeah.
He's listed as Paul here in the credits. He is also listed as a composer.
Okay.
So yeah, that kind of backs up your thought there.
So
the group is credited with primary artist, producer, mixing, and vocals.
Okay. So I think we're getting to the point where maybe artists are using computers a lot more to kind of mix the albums and make music, as they probably do a lot nowadays. And this is a band that doesn't rely on instruments and probably the way that some band like the Police does, or many other bands that we've talked about.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Right. So they're electronic in that way, more hearkening to the krautrock and kind of those early electronic bands.
Or like New Order and stuff like that. Yeah.
Some more modern or contemporary analog for them. And Take on Me is a perfect example of the sound, and they don't really deviate too much from that throughout the entire album. It's I would say that his voice is nimble listening to. I forgot how high he can get on the end of the chorus on Take on Me, and he uses that voice pretty effectively throughout the album. There's a smooth sound to this album, and it's kind of this overall, it's a very like confectionery poppy album with not a lot of depth. I thought I don't know if there was something lost in translation or what, but the lyrics and titles to these songs are pretty ridiculous at times. There's a track called Living a Boy's Adventure Tale that really doesn't make any sense and doesn't really say anything about what that means or how he's living a boy's adventure tale.
Does it sound to you like the never-ending story a little bit is kind of what I got? Like, it's like what would be playing in the background as they went questing. I mean, like, that's the vibe I got from that specific.
Yeah. It's all kind of meant to, disappear into the ether after you listen to it. There's a song called Blue Sky that really is just them talking about kind of making a metaphor for the blue sky vaguely that doesn't really work. There's a love song on Hunting High and Low is kind of a love song. There's The Sun Always Shines on TV. Part of that sounds in my head like the James Bond song that they would later do for The Living Daylights, and not as effective. And also in my mind, I kind of, when listening to this album, very much seeming to capitalize on kind of what Duran Duran brought to the table.
That's an interesting comparison.
You said they were a teen band. Duran Duran was definitely marketed as that in the beginning as well, so I could see them trying to do it. But I think this is of a piece with kind of what Scandinavian artists and producers excel at.
I was going to ask you that. Is there a like Scandinavianness to this album that we like? It's so funny you mentioned that, because I was going to say the same thing. I don't couple everybody, but we talk about like a New York sound or a Manchester sound. Is there like, and obviously Norway is a different country than Sweden, right?
Sure.
Where most of these artists are coming from, that I think we're lumping with the Scandinavian sound. But, and the fact that it's recorded in English.
Yeah. I think that's just to kind of reach a broader audience too, global audience. I think that's the case for most huge acts, Michael Jackson, any band who tours around the world often will sing their songs in English. But yeah, it just reminded me of kind of, ABBA is kind of the band that started it all, but this kind of clean pop sound where there's nothing kind of offensive, nothing really challenging, but it's just fun to listen to, but ultimately it doesn't really amount to much. That's kind of how I felt with this album. Nothing really rose to above Take On Me. There wasn't any other like hidden gems or things that I would say, oh, aha, that's a deep cut of aha. And it kind of left me a little underwhelmed as a result. I didn't feel as high on aha as I thought I would be, or they weren't one of those bands, unfortunately, that made me want to say, okay, they are more than just this single. I didn't really see much from them otherwise. What did you think about the album?
I described the album was a little too tidy for me, if that makes sense. And I appreciated the craft. I think the Duran Duran comparison is very good, Josh. At times they're going into a little bit of this. We haven't done this group yet, but I got a little bit of like a Depeche Mode vibe from the album as well. And like you said, there's a Scandinavianness,
but not as dark as Depeche Mode kind of evokes.
No, I mean, yeah, Depeche was a little heavier and dark, but like the way the sounds are used though. Yes. And the layering, there was elements that I saw in that. I didn't really tie them into the krautrock thing, outside of the fact that the krautrock folks were, not composing with traditional instruments. Always.
Yeah, that's kind of really the only thing I was saying.
Yeah, but I think what these folks are doing is different. They're trying to make traditional pop songs, just with synthetic stuff. I don't
Yes,
think that
correct.
Kraftwerk or Neu or stuff were they were trying to do something completely different. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
an art experiment. I think this is less art experiment and more let's make music for the masses, and that's why. I think Take on Me and The Sun Always Shines on TV are by far the tracks that have the most play. I shouldn't say by far because Hunting High and Low has a lot, interestingly, too. But to me, those are the two songs that are clearly designed to be the singles. And they are the strongest songs on the album.
Yep.
You can pretty much, it builds to a tidy chorus in each time. The layering is traditional, and that you get sort of one synth line, and then you get an intro, and then there's layering, but it's not complex layering. At least that not to my ear. I wasn't picking up on things that in a re-listen, even the second time, that I was like, ooh, that snuck by me, that I didn't catch it the first time. It's almost designed to be mass consumed the first time you get it. And because of that, I think you said confectionery. I think that's what it is. It's like eating a donut, right? You know what I mean? Like you're going to eat a donut, but you're not going to... except for the most exquisite donut, you're not going to savor the donut. You know what I mean?
Or like cotton candy.
You're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not going to remember it necessarily. And I think, unfortunately, that's where this falls for me, too. There's enough proficiency and enough pleasantness to this album that I certainly wouldn't pan it or say don't listen to it.
Right.
But if I'm going to go into like the recommend phase, I need more. And on the lyric end of things, it's non-offensive. Musically, it's non-offensive, and it does have the dreaded thing I can say, which is it does sound like at times like department store music. And like I said, I think Josh knows me pretty well. I'm not a big like science fiction fantasy guy, and when I'm getting like never-ending story vibes off of songs you're writing, it does sort of. I remember, and this is to truly tell a funny combination, Josh. I remember the first time that I ever saw The Never-Ending Story. I was a very irritated, like 7 or 8 year old kid, and I was placed in one of those childcare centers at an IKEA. How on point is that? And I remember just associating that movie, with being in the IKEA and wanting to get out of there, and like feeling like I was. And because of that, I don't know if that created a negative vibe of that for me, but it does seem like the type of song that would both be in an IKEA in the background, but also, like you said, like a Express. Or scoring sort of like a whimsical 80s and 90s like child movie at times, especially like Love is Reason or Living a Boy's Adventure Tale. And Hunting High and Low, it's always weird to me when there's a love song that doesn't come off as either sad or romantic or euphoric to me. It's just kind of there, and I'm like, what is this relationship that's it's creating a love song, but I cannot evoke. Like, to me, the great love songs evoke something like bitterness,
like
anger,
no passion.
It's not sexy necessarily. It's not romantic. It's not like vengeful.
Longing.
It's just there. It's like I can't. It just seems like you're going to like casually reach to kiss, like someone on the cheek. You know what I mean? And admire their and read magazines while one person's on a chair and the other person's on a couch. Like, yes, you're there, but like, what is this to me? I can't evoke what I'm supposed to evoke from it. So it was a weird love song that way. But so I'm very neutral on this. Little disappointed. I was hoping for more because I enjoy Take on Me so much, as it's one of my favorite one-hit wonders. I wonder if it would be as big for me, though, without the video. Although when I listen to it both times, it still does pop as a pretty great song. And how I know it is because I'm not always a huge synth pop guy, and it still pops as a great song to me, even though it's going against tendencies. So, and it's got 1.193 billion views on Spotify, Josh. So, pretty amazing. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, I'm with you. I can't pan this album, but it's not. There's no depth here and nothing that is really memorable for me enough to recommend it.
And musically, I would like to, sometimes when Matt's not here, Josh and I kind of go more esoteric and a little light on the craft of the music. But I tried to really listen this week, and I have some notes. But like Josh said, this is a composed album. So it's more about the production values, which are clean, crisp, linear, I would say,
Yes.
are the trademarks of it, and synthy, but not icy synthy, not dark synthy, like more bright, glistening synthy.
Yep.
Would you say?
Yes.
There also isn't sort of things like with a lot of Scandinavian music. Sometimes I think, and you tell me what you think of this, Josh, and I'll end with this. I find that like Scandinavian pop is more divorced from the elements of pop music that I would say are anchored more in like African American music.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like the R&B and soul elements that are parts of a lot of American pop.
Yes.
You know, I think sometimes they're kind of drained of it in Scandinavian pop. I find that a little bit with K-pop too. And I think, honestly, it's because where it's coming from, right? Does not have a tradition of, like,
Right.
you know, just like we do, like, of
Yeah, it's
black
not-
music, right?
Yeah, it's not founded in the blues or anything like that.
Yeah, because if you're looking at what like American pop music is at the time, even the stuff that's synthier, you know what I mean? Like like Madonna or Prince or stuff. I mean, that is, you know, that very Michael Jackson, right? That stuff's all Cyndi Lauper. We talked about, you know, just stuff like that that's going there. It's not as divorced from it, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep, I agree. Antiseptic is another word that comes to mind for this album.
Yeah, but it's if you like pleasant pop music and you like the 80s sound, I actually think this one would be something you'd enjoy. It's just a little bit of that sound goes a long way for me, and I was looking for it to sort of transcend, and it didn't get for me.
Yep, same.